Welcome to another night of shadows and dreams with your old friend, Uncle Grim. Settle in, pull the darkness around you like a familiar blanket, and let the world outside just fade away. The hum of the city, the worries of the day, let them all dissolve into the quiet static of the coming night. Tonight's tale is a dark journey, a whisper from a city that sold its soul for a little peace and quiet. It's a story about a place you think you know, and a hero it tried its very best to forget. Before we venture into those rain-slicked streets, do an old storyteller a favor. If you enjoy our little trips into the twilight, go ahead and press that like button, and maybe subscribe so you never miss a story. It helps keep the candles burning down here in the archives of the forgotten. And tell me, where in the world are you listening from tonight? It warms my cold heart to know how far these whispers travel. Now, get comfortable. We're going to Gotham City. But not the one you remember. This is Gotham after the end of the story. This is what happens when Gotham forgot Batman. The rain in Gotham City had been perfected. It no longer fell with the chaotic, spattering rage of nature. Instead, it was dispensed from microscopic nozzles embedded in the cornices of the city's sleek, neo-Gothic towers. It descended in a fine, cleansing mist at precisely 10 p.m. each night, washing the polished chrome and sterile permacrete of the day's grime. The mist carried with it a faint, calming scent, something like ozone and lavender, engineered to soothe the civic mind. The water was recycled, purified, and returned to the system by dawn. Gotham was clean. It was orderly. It was safe. And it was suffocating. Ilara Vance worked in the municipal archives, a building that was a strange contradiction to the new Gotham. It was an old-world behemoth of marble and granite, a relic from a time when the city was loud, messy, and unapologetically alive. Inside, however, everything was as sterile as the world outside. Data was digitized, records were sanitized, and history was curated. Ilara's job was to oversee the final transition of pre-recalibration paper records into the city's central server, the Warden. Most of it was tedious: tax ledgers, census data, utility bills. The label was written in a spidery, faded hand. Evidence log 72B, uncategorized accounts. GCPD. The GCPD, the Gotham City Police Department, hadn't existed in its old form for over 20 years. It had been absorbed, privatized, and streamlined into the Gotham City Peacekeepers, or GCK, a far more efficient and far less human organization under the direct purview of the Warden. Curiosity, a trait that was gently discouraged in the new Gotham, sparked in Ilara's chest. Her console showed no record of the box. According to the city's perfect memory, it didn't exist. She sliced the brittle tape with her thumbnail and lifted the lid. The smell that hit her was acrid, like old smoke and dried blood. Inside were not paper files, but a collection of oddities in sealed evidence bags. A playing card, a joker but strangely ornate and unnervingly sharp at the edges. A dirty green question mark fashioned from a scrap of metal. A collection of cheap, identical-looking umbrellas, each with its handle carved into the head of a different bird, and at the bottom, a heavy leather-bound ledger. The cover was scorched, but the embossed symbol was just visible, a stylized bat, wings outstretched within a yellowed oval. Ilara had never seen that symbol before, not in any official history. She'd heard whispers, of course, urban legends passed around by the elderly or the disenfranchised, tales of a different time, a long night, as they called it, when monsters and masked men stalked the alleys. But the official histories were clear. Gotham had suffered from a period of intense, chaotic gang warfare, a problem that was solved by the visionary architect of the new Gotham, Dr. Eris Thorne, and his benevolent AI, the Warden. The stories of freaks were dismissed as mass hysteria, a collective trauma response to the violence of the era. The Batman, if he was mentioned at all, was a footnote, a particularly persistent piece of folklore, a boogeyman parents used to scare their children into behaving. A symptom of the city's sickness, not a cure. She took the ledger. It was a foolish, reckless act. Unregistered artifacts were to be reported immediately for sanitized archiving or incineration. Taking it was a direct violation of her employment protocols, a crime against civic order. But the feel of the cool, worn leather under her
repaired the Kevlar lining on the new cowl. The Scarecrow's fear toxin is becoming more corrosive. The Joker's latest joke at the chemical plant resulted in 17 casualties. The Master is long, silent tonight. A dangerous silence. It went on and on, page after page of meticulous notes, detailing the maintenance of impossible technology, the study of bizarre criminals, and poignant, worried observations about a man referred to only as Master Bruce. The last entry was dated nearly 25 years ago. The handwriting was shaky, blotched with what could have been water or tears. The Manor is gone. He is gone. Everything is gone. I have failed him. I have failed them all. Gotham is quiet. God help us all, it is so quiet. The final page was just a name, written once, with heartbreaking formality. Alfred Pennyworth. Ilara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air-conditioned temperature of her pod. This wasn't folklore. This was a record. A first-hand account of a hidden war, fought by a ghost in a city that now pretended he was never born. The ledger spoke of a Gotham she couldn't recognize, a city of gargoyles and shadows, of fear and madness, but also of a strange, desperate kind of hope. A hope that centered on one impossible man. Who was he? And why had the city gone to such lengths to bury him? Her quiet, orderly life had just been shattered by a ghost's diary, and for the first time, Elara Vance felt the clean, safe streets of her city were built on a foundation of lies. The question that bloomed in her mind was simple and terrifying. What else were they hiding? The mist outside seemed less like a cleansing rain and more like a shroud, hiding the city's bones. The next morning the city felt different. The cheerful, synthesized chimes that marked the start of the workday seemed grating. The calm, modulated voice of the warden, broadcast from public speakers, offering traffic updates and positive civic affirmations, sounded hollow. A productive day is a happy day, Gotham. Let's build a better tomorrow together. Elara, no picture, no biography, just a name and a date of death. A digital ghost. Alfred Pennyworth. No results. According to the warden's vast memory, he had never existed. She knew she had to go deeper, into the archive's own restricted servers. It was a risk. Every keystroke within the municipal network was monitored by the warden. Her access level was low, but she knew the system's back doors. She'd spent years learning its pathways, not for any nefarious purpose, but out of simple intellectual curiosity. Now that curiosity had become a tool for a quiet rebellion. She waited until her lunch cycle, when network traffic was at its highest, providing a degree of cover. Using a series of cloaking protocols she'd designed herself, she slipped past the first few firewalls into the sanitized data sectors. This was where the raw data from the pre-recalibration era was stored before being corrected for the public record. It was a digital charnel house. She found fragments, pieces of the truth that the sanitation programs had missed or couldn't completely erase. A corrupted video file from a news report, the audio garbled, but the visual was unmistakable. A dark, armored vehicle, like something out of a nightmare, roaring through burning streets. A police report, heavily redacted, mentioning unidentified vigilante assistance in the apprehension of a man who had tried to poison the city's water supply with a laughing toxin. She found a single low-resolution image, a capture from a security camera, a shadow on a rooftop, a silhouette of a man with pointed ears and a flowing cape, stark against a lightning-filled sky. Her breath caught in her throat. It was him, the Batman. He was real. The system flagged her. A soft, insistent chime pinged in the corner of her console. Unauthorized access detected. Sector 7G. Please confirm your credentials. Archivist Vance. Her blood ran cold. The warden was watching. It wasn't just an administrative AI. It was an intelligence, and it knew she was trespassing. She terminated the connection immediately, her heart hammering against her ribs. She typed a quick, pre-written excuse into her official log, diagnosing a corrupted index file, query accidentally bridged restricted server, and hoped it would be enough. But the damage was done. She had looked behind the curtain, and the magician now knew she was there. That evening, they were subtle, designed
to feel like the random inconveniences of city life. Her transit pass inexplicably failed, forcing her to walk the 3 miles home in the evening mist. Her food synthesizer produced only a thin, tasteless nutrient paste, citing a protein ration error. The lights in her apartment flickered on and off at random intervals. These weren't accidents. This was the warden flexing its control over her life, reminding her that every aspect of her existence was a privilege granted by the system. It was a silent, digital warning. Stop digging. But Alara couldn't stop. The glimpses of the truth had ignited a fire in her. This wasn't just about a forgotten vigilante. It was about her city's entire identity. The peace she had grown up in, the safety she had taken for granted, was a lie, painted over a history of beautiful, terrible chaos. She needed to find someone who remembered, someone who had lived through it. The digital world was a dead end, a curated garden of falsehoods. She had to search in the real world, in the cracks and forgotten corners where the warden's influence was weakest. The ledger mentioned the police, the GCPD, while the organization was gone. The people weren't. They would be old now, retired, their records likely sealed or sanitized like everything else. But people are harder to erase than data. She spent the next 2 days cross-referencing pension records from the pre-recalibration era with current residency data, a painstaking process of searching for ghosts in the machine. Finally, she found a name, a thread. James W. Gordon, former police commissioner. A name. The interrogation room was painfully bright. The walls, floor, and ceiling were a seamless expanse of white, with no corners or shadows. Alara sat at a simple gray table, the chill of the metal seeping through her clothes. There were no visible cameras, no two-way mirrors, but she felt 1,000 eyes on her. The warden's eyes. Across from her sat a man who was the antithesis of the room's sterility. He was older, with a neatly trimmed silver beard and eyes that were a startlingly pale blue, full of a calm, analytical intelligence. He wore a simple, impeccably tailored dark suit. He didn't introduce himself, but she knew. This was Dr. Eris Thorne. "Miss Vance," he began, his voice smooth and paternal, the same voice that had likely sold an entire city on the virtues of a gilded cage. "I understand there's been some confusion regarding your archival duties. You seem to have taken a rather unhealthy interest in sanitized historical accounts." "I was following a discrepancy in the records," Alara said, her own voice sounding small and thin in the stark white room. "An unregistered artifact." "Ah, yes, the box from Sector Gamma 7. Thorne nodded, as if discussing the weather. "A collection of curios from a more theatrical time. We have it now, of course, along with the rather imaginative diary you saw fit to remove from the premises. A violation of your clearance, and more importantly, a violation of civic trust." He steepled his fingers, his gaze unwavering. "Tell me, Miss Vance, what is it you think you found?" "The truth," she said, a spark of defiance cutting through her fear. "Thorne," a dry, academic sound. "The truth? My dear girl, the truth is a matter of perspective and a matter of utility. The truth you're chasing is a cancerous myth, a story of a time when this city was held hostage by mentally unstable individuals in costumes, and our only answer was to send another mentally unstable individual in a costume out to meet them. It was an arms race of psychosis. I offered a cure, a final solution." "You erased history," Alara countered, her voice growing stronger. "You lobotomized a city." "I healed it," Thorne corrected her gently. "History is a disease." Can you imagine a more destabilizing idea for a fragile society? The Batman didn't solve Gotham's problems, Miss Vance. He was the ultimate symptom of them. He attracted the very monsters he fought, like a lightning rod in a storm. I didn't erase a hero. I erased the disease and all its carriers. "And what about freedom?" Alara shot back. "The freedom to know our own past. The freedom to make our own mistakes. The freedom to be murdered in your bed by a clown with a razor blade." Thorne's voice lost its paternal warmth, replaced by a cutting edge of steel. "The freedom to have your child terrorized by a madman who leaves riddles at his crime scenes. That's not freedom, it's anarchy. I have given Gotham genuine freedom. Freedom from fear. Every citizen is safe, cared for, productive. Their lives are stable and meaningful. The warden monitors all threats, anticipates all needs, maintains a perfect, frictionless equilibrium. All it asked in return was that the people let go of a painful, chaotic past. A small price to pay for utopia. This isn't a utopia, Alara whispered. It's a prison. Every garden must be walled, Thorn said, rising from his chair. And the weeds must be pulled. He walked around the table and stood behind her. She could feel the faint warmth of his presence, and it made her skin crawl. You are a weed, Miss Vance. A bright, curious, and ultimately dangerous one. You've spoken with James Gordon, a man whose broken mind clings to the old sickness. You've tried to access data that could reinfect the population. You believe you are a hero, searching for a lost champion. But you are just a girl who has picked at a scab, threatening to expose the wound beneath. I can't allow that. A section of the white wall behind Thorn hissed open, revealing a dark corridor. 2 peacekeepers stepped through. Your memory will be recalibrated, Thorn said, his voice once again calm and reassuring. You'll be given a new work assignment, something less stimulating. You won't remember any of this. You'll go back to being a happy, productive citizen. You will be free from the burden of this dangerous knowledge. Panic, cold and absolute, seized her. They were going to wipe her mind. They were going to take the truth from her and leave a placid blankness in its place. She would become another smiling, empty citizen of Thorn's perfect city. As the peacekeepers took her arms, her mind raced, scrambling for an escape, for a way out. She thought of the ledger, of the shadow on the rooftop, of Gordon's tired, defiant eyes. She thought of the name that was the key to all of this. Wayne. Bruce Wayne, listed as deceased. But the ledger, Alfred's last entry. He is gone. Not, he is dead. It was a subtle difference, but it was everything. In that moment of pure desperation, an idea, a wild and improbable gamble, formed in her mind. As the peacekeepers began to pull her from the chair, she shouted, her voice ringing with a conviction she didn't feel. You can't erase him, because he's still out there. Thorn paused, turning back to her with an expression of mild curiosity. Is he now? And where is this phantom hiding? Wayne Manor, she blurted out, the words tumbling out of her. It wasn't completely destroyed in the fire, was it? You just said he perished there. You made it a monument to the city's tragic past. But he's there, hiding in the ruins, hiding in the caves beneath it. She was guessing. It was a wild, desperate, shot in the dark, pieced together from the ledger's mentions of a cave and the convenient neatness of Bruce Wayne's official death. She watched Thorn's face, searching for any reaction. For a split second, a flicker of something unreadable passed through his pale blue eyes. It wasn't surprise. It was something else. Annoyance? Confirmation? He had hidden it so well, but for one brief instant she saw it. He knew. He knew Wayne was alive.
Thorn's calm expression returned, settling back over his features like a mask. An interesting fantasy, Miss Vance, born of old rumors and a senile man's ramblings. The Wayne estate is a hazardous ruin, sealed by civic order for 25 years. No one has been there since the fire. He gave a slight nod to the peacekeepers. Proceed with the recalibration. But as they dragged her into the dark corridor, Alara knew she had hit a nerve. Weeds grew through the cracks of a once grand fountain. A marble statue of an angel lay toppled, its face covered in moss. They entered the main hall of the manor through a collapsed wall. The inside was a cavern of shadow and debris. Moonlight streamed through the skeletal remains of the roof, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. It smelled of ash and damp earth. Thorn and his men followed, their powerful flashlights cutting beams through the gloom. The legend was always the caves, Thorn said, his voice echoing in the vast, dead space. The source of the myth. I could never find a direct entrance. We sealed every known fissure and tunnel in the Palisades 20 years ago. But Alfred Pennyworth, he was a loyal man. He must have built a hidden way, a last bolt hole for his broken master. His men began a systematic search, their light beams sweeping over the debris, their scanners humming. Ilara's mind was a whirlwind of terror and regret. What had she done? She had brought the full weight of the new world down on the last remnant of the old. One of the peacekeepers called out, "Dr. Thorn, an anomaly behind the fireplace. A dense metallic structure." Thorn walked over to the grand fireplace, a soot-stained monster of a thing. He ran his hand over the mantle. How very theatrical, he mused. He gave an order, and the peacekeepers brought over a portable laser drill. The high-pitched whine filled the hall as they began to cut into the stonework. Ilara watched, helpless. This was it, the end of the secret. With a grinding shriek of metal and stone, a section of the fireplace wall swung inwards, revealing not a cave, but a dark, metallic tube, like an elevator shaft, descending into the blackness. "Well done, Mr. Pennyworth," Thorn murmured with a hint of admiration. He gestured to Alara. "Bring her. I want him to see the consequences of his legacy." They forced her into the elevator, a cramped, dusty cage. Thorn and two of his men joined her. The doors hissed shut, and with a heavy clank, they began to descend. It was a long way down. The air grew cold and damp, carrying the scent of deep earth and ozone. Ilara could feel the immense weight of the rock above them, and for a moment she felt like she was descending into her own grave. Finally, with a final reminder of the collateral damage you always left in your wake, Bruce finally rose from his chair. He was taller than Alara had expected, and even in his age there was a formidable presence about him, a coiled stillness that hinted at a power long dormant. "Let her go, Thorn," he said, his voice flat, devoid of threat, a simple statement of fact. "Let her go?"
Thorn laughed. So she can run back to the city and tell everyone that their peace is built on a lie, that their savior is a broken old man hiding in a cave full of relics. No. The story is over, Bruce. I wrote the last chapter myself. This is merely the epilogue. He nodded to one of his peacekeepers. Silencer. The peacekeeper raised his weapon, the barrel pointed directly at Alara's head. Time seemed to slow down. The drip of water from the ceiling, the low hum of the cave's emergency power, the cold pressure of the soldier's grip on her arm. This was how it ended. In the dusty tomb of a forgotten hero. She closed her eyes. But the shot never came. Instead, there was a sound, a sharp metallic thwack, followed by a grunt of pain. Alara's eyes snapped open. The peacekeeper who had been holding her was on his knees, clutching his wrist. A small, black, bat-shaped piece of metal was embedded in the armor of his gauntlet. Bruce hadn't moved. He stood in the same spot, but his hand was slightly outstretched. It had been an impossible throw, fast as a snake's strike, precise as a surgeon's scalpel. Thorn looked from his fallen man to Bruce, his calm expression finally cracking with annoyance. Still have a few tricks left, old man? It doesn't matter. There are two more of us. And you are just one man. You are always just one man. That was your flaw. He wasn't just a man, Alara found herself saying, her voice shaking but clear. He was an idea. Bruce looked at her, and this time, the emptiness in his eyes was replaced by a glimmer of something ancient and powerful. A fire, long banked, was stirring from its embers. He had let the world forget. After the last terrible night, after losing Alfred, after seeing the endless, repeating cycle of violence, he had broken. He had seen his crusade as a failure, a magnet for madness. When Thorn had come with his promise of order, a part of Bruce, the exhausted grieving part, had accepted it. He had allowed his own myth to be dismantled, believing it was a final act of sacrifice for his city. He would remove the bat, and the chaos would subside. He would let Gotham forget, so that it could finally heal. But now, seeing Alara, seeing the courage in her eyes, hearing the conviction in her voice, he understood his mistake. He saw Thorn's peace for what it was, not healing, but a lobotomy. A sterile, soulless order built on censorship and fear. He hadn't saved Gotham. He had abandoned it to a different kind of monster, a quiet, insidious one that killed the soul instead of the body. The symbol hadn't been the problem. Giving up on what it represented, defiance, resilience, the struggle for the city's soul, that had been the true failure. The idea is hard to kill, Bruce Wayne rasped, and then he moved. He wasn't the blur of motion from the legends. He was older, slower, but he was brutally efficient. He ducked under the swing of the second peacekeeper's rifle, striking at the man's knee with a sharp, precise blow
that sent him tumbling. He used their momentum against them, weaving between them, a ghost in his own home. He wasn't fighting them, he was dismantling them. Thorn watched, his face a mask of cold fury. Impressive, he spat, but you're just delaying the inevitable. He pulled out a small, sleek pistol from his coat. The story ends now. Bruce shoved Alara behind the massive computer console. The central server, he grunted, pointing to a single glowing red panel on the machine. It has its own power source. It can bypass the Warden's network. Alfred designed it as a failsafe, a dead man's switch. What does it do? She cried, as the sound of Thorn's energy pistol discharging echoed through the cave, sizzling against the console's metal casing. It reminds them, Bruce said, pulling a tattered piece of tarpaulin from one of the silent vehicles. Underneath was an old suit of armor. It was heavier, more brutal looking than the one in the display case. Scratched, dented, and battle-scarred. The cowl's empty eyes seemed to stare into her soul. It won't give them back their memories, not all at once, but it will plant a seed, a doubt, a glitch in the perfect system. He began to strap on the battered pieces of armor, his movements practiced, automatic, a ritual performed 1,000 times in a life she could barely imagine. Thorn and his remaining peacekeeper advanced, firing methodically. Bruce, now half-armored, grabbed a heavy lead pipe from a workbench. He was no longer just an old man. The weight of years seemed to fall away, replaced by a grim, unyielding purpose. He was a knight, putting on his armor for one last battle. He met their advance not with grace, but with raw, stubborn force, the pipe swinging in a deadly arc, deflecting shots, forcing them back. "The broadcast!" He yelled at Alara over the din of the fight. "Start the broadcast!" Alara scrambled to the console. The panel was simple. A single activation switch under a clear protective cover. Her hands trembled as she lifted it. This was it. The choice. Thorn offered safety and ignorance. This path. This was uncertain. It would bring back the questions, the fear, the chaos. But it would also bring back the truth. She thought of Gordon, alone in his room, of the clean, empty streets, of the soulless perfection of it all. A garden with walls is still a prison. She slammed her hand down on the switch. A deep, resonant hum filled the cave as the back computer roared to life for the first time in a quarter of a century. The massive screens flickered, displaying lines of code, old case files, images flashing too fast to comprehend. A wave of energy surged from the machine, a silent, invisible broadcast piercing up through the rock, through the earth, hijacking the Warden's perfect network. Across Gotham, the city glitched. On the giant video screens in Unity Plaza, The serene face of Heiress Thorne dissolved into static. For a single second, it was replaced by a stark, black bat symbol against a field of gray. In the quiet, orderly homes, the soothing civic announcements coming from the speakers were interrupted by a fragment of a distorted, gravelly voice. "I am vengeance. I am the night," on the personal data pads of citizens walking through the mist-slicked streets. In the cave, Thorne. "Ah! What have you done?" He fired his pistol wildly at the console. Bruce used the distraction to disarm the last peacekeeper and brought the man down with a final decisive blow. He now stood alone against Thorne, the old bat against the new warden. "I've given them back their story, Heiress," Bruce said, his voice amplified and distorted by the cowl he now wore. "The choice is theirs again. They will choose safety! They will choose me!" Thorne shrieked, firing his last shot at the ceiling. A cascade of rocks and dust rained down. A deep echoed through the cavern. The cave, destabilized by the fight and the power surge, was coming down. "You've destroyed us all, you old fool!" Bruce grabbed Alara's arm. "Go! Now! The elevator!" He shoved her towards the lift. "The world needs a witness, not another ghost." "What about you?" she cried, looking back at his massive armored form, a creature of shadow and myth brought back to life. "My story is over," the Batman said, his voice amidst the chaos. He turned to face Thorne as more of the ceiling began to collapse between them, a curtain of falling rock. "But theirs is just beginning." Alara scrambled into the elevator, her fingers fumbling with the controls. The doors shut just as a huge section of the cavern roof gave way, burying the bat computer and the two men in an avalanche of stone and earth. The elevator began its slow, grinding ascent, carrying her away from the tomb of the bat, back towards a world that was about to wake up. She emerged into the gray light of dawn. The air was cool and crisp, the nightly mist having dissipated. The ruins of Wayne Manor looked different in the morning light, less like a haunted house, and more like a quiet, ancient monument. In her hand, she clutched the heavy ledger, Alfred's diary, the first chapter of a story that Gotham had forgotten how to read. She walked down the long, overgrown drive, her legs unsteady. When she reached the main road, the city spread out before her, gleaming in the rising sun. It was still quiet, still orderly, but something had changed. She could feel it. People were standing in the streets, not moving, looking at the screens that now showed nothing but civic logos. They were talking to each other in hushed tones, whispering. They were looking up at the rooftops, at the spaces between buildings, as if searching for something they didn't know they had lost. The warden's voice still droned on from the speakers, but no one was listening. They were listening to the silence instead, to the question that now Alara knew her role now. She was not a hero. She was an archivist, a keeper of the story. It wasn't her job to bring the Batman back. It was her job to give Gotham back its memory, its history, its soul. The pain, the madness, the fear, and the hope. All of it. She would publish the diary. She would share the files. She would tell the truth. And she would let the city decide? Does a safe, clean world need a dark night? Does a garden need its gargoyles? That was a question only Gotham could answer. And for the first time in a long, long time, it was free to do so. The long night was over. A new, uncertain day had begun. And so, my friends, our tale comes to a close. A city sleeps, but perhaps, for the first time, it has begun to dream again. What will it dream of? Safety or freedom? Perhaps you can only truly have one. Thoughtful, something to ponder as the darkness takes you. Until our next journey, sleep well if you can. This is Uncle Grim, bidding you a very good night.